Hey, you two, Brian LCS, and welcome to the Comic Book Community 411. And my special guest is Rob Fat Stacks Comics.
How
Rob,
you doing,
welcome.
comic book friends and fiends?
Rob, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Happy to be here.
Before we get into the formal questions, why don't you introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself and your channel and the Great Wall of Comics behind you.
Nah, sure. Well, I'm Rob Fat Stacks, at Rob's Fat Stacks, Rob's dot Fat Stacks, I guess, everywhere where social media can be found, pretty much. The I started doing YouTube a couple years ago, and Instagram around that same time. Wasn't I'm just an old dude who was stuck his way on Facebook or whatever else, only because like got kicked off of MySpace finally. I don't know, but something to do, something to pass some time, and it just kind of took over, and it's kind of become like the new hobby that I spend most of my free time doing. Um, and channel. So my channel on YouTube it started off as unboxings, and it's odd, like when we had the community awards, and like when I got nominated this year, one of the nominations was for an unboxing channel, and I never really think of myself as an unboxing channel, but then I really thought about it. I said, I guess actually in reality 2/3 of the content pretty much is unboxing. So yeah, I guess I am. So there's like usually a Monday and a Thursday unboxing, and Saturdays I do only slabs, where my co-host Chris the Comic Vet and I have community member come on, and we sit down and kind of go through some of their slab comic book collection and learn a little bit about our community members through the books that they're collecting.
Yeah, no, it's that the Saturday show, the Only Slabs is kind of it's become a community hangout, right? You have so many people coming in. I mean, it's often you're as watching it, you're seeing books that you may have never seen, or a genre of books. I know you kind of fell into the space and the bubble helmet,
Mhm.
based on some of the books that you saw guests come on with. So it's always a fun hangout because you never know what somebody may show off. So.
Yeah, there are some books that I have had to go out and acquire because I've seen them they've been presented on the show, and I said, God damn it, I need that book. And it is fun because I mean, the way the show started off and where it's evolved to over time, and as it's grown, and as it's become easier and easier to get guests, because I reach out to people now and I don't have to explain as much. I mean, I still have a kind of cookie cutter. Here's my crib sheet, or my crib
Your
notes.
elevator pitch,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
right. But people understand more and more. It's like, oh yeah, I know Only Slabs, or I've seen some episodes. I like it. It's great. So it it's a little bit easier, which is nice, and which has allowed you to also move upscale with some of the collector base, so I'm being able to get into some of these collectors that have some really impressive and amazing slabs and comic books, that are able to have them come on the show and present them. And I like to try to mix it up with, as much as it's fun to watch nothing but, oh, here's an Action Comics one, and then here's a this, at the same time, I want to still touch bases with other members of the community too, and show off, hey, here's somebody who likes a lot of modern books, or here's somebody who's, the other week when we had Cantonese Comic Kid on, hey, he's huge into Frazetta stuff and fantasy stuff. So great, completely different than what we've been showing for a while, because it is, yeah, we want to expose different elements and get to know these collectors and get to know what they have. And sometimes you find something, you go, wow, that's a beautiful cover, I didn't even think about that, or I
Right.
want to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
down that
Some of the
road.
golden age stuff or the pre-code horror that we've seen. Yeah, it's just so many different you know niches within comic book collecting that
Yeah.
people collect. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know. Like, I was on something the other day, and somebody mentioned something that, oh yeah, that's a shark cover. There's a whole community of people who collect just shark covers, and I was like, oh,
Oh wow. Yeah.
really? Wow. Okay, I didn't even know about. I mean, I knew about robot covers and stuff, but and flying saucers and Hitler covers and stuff, but not shark covers.
Shark, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, I enjoy a good underwater cover, but Yeah, I didn't know people were
Yeah.
basing their collection around just sharks, but
There's a little there's a if there's anything and you like, man, there's a niche for you. There's a little piece of it, man. We'll
we'll
carve
find
it
it. We'll
out.
find it for you.
Exactly.
All right. So why don't we get into the, the questions? We have four questions that we ask everybody, and then we'll do two random questions at the end. But the first question I always ask is, so how did you get into collecting comic books?
I was a late bloomer when it came to comics. I started collecting comics in 1992, and I was at military college, and at that time, deprived. It's my freshman year. A freshman at military college, you have no privileges. You're a nobody. You can't do anything until one glorious day they suddenly recognize you, and you become a member of the Corps of Cadets, and you can actually do some stuff like go to the bookstore and buy reading material that's not your textbooks and
Right.
some other stuff. And went down there, and there was a spinner rack with some comics on the wall there, and okay, but maybe I'll take a look at some of those. And there was some shiny red foil comic book there, Spider-Man 2099 issue number 1. And I was like, ooh, that's shiny. It's pretty. It's Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man. It's a number 1. It's a good place to jump onto a story. And the rest was comic book glory, yes, for a while. um throughout college I continued to collect books. I would read Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Amazing, all the Spider-Man books, this 2099 books, and Wolverine were pretty much the mainstay of what I was reading. And then the Clone Saga came, and Maximum Clonage came, and I was so irritated with what happened that I quit. I sold my collection and I walked away,
Wow.
and didn't pick up a comic book again for probably almost 20 years. And then, fast forward, I'm married, have kids. My son is about 5, 7 years old. You want him to encourage him to do some more reading other than just watching TV. And okay, well, he's interested in superheroes and stuff, right? In Star Wars. Hey, maybe I'll take you down to the comic store and let's go pick up some comic books. Maybe you'll be interested in reading those. So we go down and pick up some Iron Man, some Miles Morales Spider Man, and some Star Wars, Darth Vader books, and pick them up, take them home. He reads them, and as long as I paid for them, well, I'll read them. And so I start reading them and start going, okay. And I start adding a couple books to the pull list for myself. And next thing I know, he's tired and doesn't want to read comics anymore. And I'm still going.
All right. So
So
that was
I
that's
figure,
a good excuse. I mean, get the son reading, and then yeah,
yeah,
you can pick up some books too.
yeah. So it's been probably about 15, 14, 15 years probably since that started. So
And that's I think most of us collect for a period of time and then go. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, "Oh no, I've collected." Throughout. There's always the ups and downs of and priority of
yeah,
life, right?
yeah. Usually, I think there are, and usually when people, you hear people like to tell their story where they usually start younger than I did, and then usually around the high school, their senior year of high school and early college years, they go on a hiatus as they find girls they have to actually study, or guys, or
Whatever you
whatever.
like.
Right. And then have to go into, or maybe it's not as cool and you're worried about your image, or maybe you're actually focused on studying, or any number, you don't have as much money, all these types of things that will cause you to dull down. And then later on, you get fired back up and you get back into it again. I don't hear too many people who tell my story of, well, this story really turned me off so bad that I threw my hands up in the air and got rid of it all and walked away. But it's a true story. I really, Maximum Clonage just really irked me that much.
Yeah, I have the benefit of have not been collecting during that time, so I hear
Don't
the
go
stories
back. Yeah.
and I haven't gone back and read all of those, the stuff that I missed because certainly I'm a Spider-Man fan, and I'm kind of picking back up to some of the books that I'd missed when I wasn't collecting, but I don't have the history that some people have with some of those, the '90s, um, the '90s stuff.
Yeah, well, but it was all shiny.
Yes, that I do know. That I do know. So, how did you make the leap then to putting it on a YouTube channel, starting to make videos?
Yeah, I so for the longest time, it was just for a good portion of that. Once I got back into it, it was just me pull my pull list, and I'm at my LCS and reading my books and putting them away. That was all there was to it. There wasn't anything else. And then I don't know, somewhere along the line, I started deciding to look at a few looking online and fell into a little bit of the variant trap, I suppose.
Hmm.
Started picking up some modern variants and this, that, and the other thing, and started going, all right, this is kind of interesting. And then uh, decided to send in some books to get graded. And that was really that was really where it first started with my first submission through my LCS when I sent some books in to get graded. And I had been looking online ahead of time because I'm a guy who does research. When I want to get into something, I usually start to do some research. So I was like watching other videos and stuff about CGC and CBCS and all this stuff, and people were doing these unboxings. Oh, well, I can do that. I mean,
Right.
whatever. And I don't really remember any other reason other than that it was kind of like, well, I can do that. And I think that we were at the time, I think at that time the pandemic had just started and we were just kind of starting to get locked down because I still had my full beard, which I didn't hack that off until most of that off until I couldn't go to the barber on a regular basis or at all anymore. Um, so I just started doing a few videos out in the garage, setting up I didn't even know about StreamYard or anything. So I'm like, I'm using my work's virtual meeting platform to do a recorded meeting and then download that to upload. So like my really old videos have like my company logo in the
Oh, really?
corner. Yeah, it's like really stupid stuff that you do, and you're like, whatever. But yeah, it's just kind of like well, if how hard is it to open up a box and show off something that you got? And I think everybody who collects something wants to show it off. I mean, you don't, and that's kind of like the whole premise of my show only slab stuff even too. It's like you do you spend the money on this, you invest the time, you invest the effort, everything else. Nobody wants to do all that just to sequester it away and not
Right. Right.
talk about their people love to talk about what they've collected and show off what they've collected, especially to other people that are interested in those things. So that is, what was one of your favorite things when you were a grade school kid, man? Was show and tell,
Oh,
especially
sure.
when it
Yeah.
was your turn to bring in something to show off to your friends. And that's what this is. So YouTube was a chance to do some show and tell and show off the stuff. And yeah, it was just starting to do that for a little bit. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And for a while, it was because you know how it is when you start off and there's like you put it out there and you're like, well, I didn't know anybody in the community. I wasn't
Right.
involved
Right.
in chat rooms or anything else. So you just put video, you're putting content out there. You go like, and you're watching. Oh wow, 3 people watched this. Somebody happened to stumble on it somehow, and you're like, okay, cool. And eventually, you slowly get a few subs here and there. And I was gonna hang it up. I think for after about 6 months, I think it was around like 60 something subscriptions. And I was
Oh,
just
okay.
like, oh, I think maybe this is just kind of like, well,
Yeah,
but
not worth the time. Right.
yeah. And then like Rod the Rican did the first shout out for me. And he reached out to me and told me that, hey, I'm going to do this shout out. Da, da. And I was like, oh, I was thinking, what's the catch?
Right.
I'm like, who does this? Who's going to help promote somebody else's stuff just for the sake of, it didn't. make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, okay, whatever. And so I'm like watching, and I'm watching his show to see it, and I'm all, this is just legit, just nice helping other people. How weird, cool. And so it kind of like gave me a little bit of a reinvigoration. And then shortly after that, I got reached out to by somebody else who said, "Oh, hey, Small Town Collectibles is doing a shout out, did a shout out about us today." And wanted me to subscribe to their channel. And I was like, "Oh, who's Small Town? I don't know Small Town Collectibles. I don't know anything about this." And so I go check it out, and it was like Thanksgiving Day. He's doing does this shout out for me. And it's like, and from that, then I just ended up, I was like, wow, again, there's this whole idea that people do stuff, and I kind of started following into him in their usual suspects group, and Gary and all them, and it just kind of went from there.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if and we do it, right? We do shout outs now and highlight other channels. And I don't I never really put it together because people did that for me. Gary B did it for me.
Hmm.
Rod the Rican did similar things, shout out for me on his show. And I was like, wow, this is great that somebody's recognizing what I'm doing. But I don't, when I do it, I'm just doing it because I want to pay it forward. But I guess the piece that we miss sometimes is that you don't know how that's going to affect the person you're shouting out. And it may be the reason why they hang around.
Yeah,
Or, like you said, it energizes them to, make that next video and kind of keep going.
which really, every time I think about it and I say these things verbally, it's like really is like, because it truly is. It was a really kind of defining moment that really kind of kicked it and said, okay, let's stick with it. Let's do this. But then I'm horrible in that, like, intend to do so many times I go into something where I intend to do some shout outs, or I try to figure some way to work some shout outs, and then I forget about them and I don't do them or something. And so, like, I'm horrible at it. And aside from people, there's like some people that I'm really passionate about, where, like when I say subscribe to Freaky Louie, people, why isn't he at 500 yet? Get him subbed, where it's like almost like insulting to me that people aren't subbing him up for some reason, because I like his content so much. But I'm not very good about going out and finding new content creators and spotlighting them, which I should, because that's what I know what it did for me. Instead, I really kind of rely on everybody else doing it. And there's so many of you guys who are doing it so well to then alert me to people to try that and go and so sub them up and fall and try to every once in a while watch something. But as you well know, it is extremely difficult to keep up on all the content that's out there, all the people that you sub to, and at the end of the day, you end up having to pick and choose, and you fall into certain ruts to some degree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that has happened over the last couple of years. Pandemic, maybe being part of the reason, but there's been so many. Like my channel started during the pandemic, and so there's a lot of influx of new
Hmm.
channels, and so and it's such a supportive community, but it is difficult to keep up with everybody because there's so many channels and so much content being, and then the live stream is another animal, right? The live stream and the hangout that happens with the chat.
Yeah.
um
Now
so
I
yeah,
do like to
it's
pay attention. I do pay attention on those as to who I'm seeing in those things. And when I do see new people showing up and I see them start, or even in my comments where I start seeing people that are regular, or I start to see that, oh, hey, it's not just a one-off thing.
right.
I really make a point then of going, okay, am I already subbed to this person or not? Yes, no. Okay, then let's rectify this. Let me go watch a couple videos, and we make sure I comment or something on a couple of these things, because even if I'm not going to get a chance to come back around to it to leave a comment on it, I'll start to have, I have a monitor right next to me that's hooked up to a TV box that runs throughout the day, right? And so I'm actually clocking a lot of view hours for people
Right, yeah,
that, that if I get a chance, I may be able to hit a thumbs up on it. But it doesn't allow me to, because it's through a TV device, it doesn't really allow me to leave messages behind. So it's a lot of view and thumbs up, and that's unfortunately what I got. But you know
right,
what? I'm doing what I can to try to help everybody out and get some clocking in on there.
right.
The
Yeah,
other
and
day, I think I had you up for like a whole day just watching. But
oh,
you said you
nice,
needed
thank
you
you.
said you needed a few more hours, so I had it up
Yeah,
for
I'm
the
getting
full
close, I'm
day.
getting close. I've seen a kind of an uptick, But no, I think that's the one thing that I probably don't like about YouTube is that the only way that you know that I've watched your content is if I leave a comment.
Unless you're a subscriber with a public thing and I tell it to also tell me about thumbs up, then I'll get notification about, hey, this person like thumbed up. But for the most part, yeah, you're right. You don't. And at the end of the day, I don't know that it matters. I mean, do I mean, it does if I want to reciprocate,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah.
But if if at the end of, but otherwise, that's just it's more data and analytics that I think there it's a delicate balancing act of like, of presenting that information. Then, like, okay, you want to say, well, I want to know who is so I can thank them or go after them. But then it's only who's not watching you.
Right,
Well,
right.
what the hell?
Right.
This person's not
Yeah, you're
watching
you're
me,
you're
right?
both sides
It's
of it,
the,
right?
it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's the same thing of like when you get your list, you have a list of your subscribers, so you can recognize them and do stuff for your subscribers. But when somebody unsubs you, it just tells you somebody's on. So, the only way that you can know is you have to go and like A B comparison. You have to do
Right,
like
right,
stuff to
right.
see, oh, who unsubbed me? Because it doesn't tell you so and so unsubbed you because and it doesn't matter why they unsub you. I don't care. Somebody doesn't unsub me, great. There's only so much money to go around from a sub standpoint, right?
Right.
I've unsubbed people that, or not unsubbed, I'm sorry, membership. I'm talking about membership. I'm
Mm,
sorry.
okay.
I've never unsubbed anybody. But I've turned off membership with certain channels because I only have so much of a budget, and
Right.
so you got to kind of spread it around. And I totally get that. So, and that's what I was totally meant. Sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
want to
no, and
retro.
I
Who's
mentioned this
unsubbing me?
to I
Triple
mentioned this to
X.
Chris. Yeah, don't unsub Rob. I mentioned to I think Chris the comic vet that because he just recently had hit and opened up his memberships, and
Hmm.
I'm not a member. I don't have a membership for anybody's channel. I'll do
Man,
super chats, here and there and support, but because I'm focused on some other things, the comic book community awards, and there's some
yeah,
expense tied to it.
totally makes sense.
I,
Well,
I
not only
just,
for
like you
that
said, I don't
aspect.
have the money to be able to do
Well,
everything. So
it's not just even the money from your standpoint, but there's a certain amount of, hey, you know what? If I'm a subscriber to this channel and this channel's getting nominated all the time or winning awards, whatever, people then go like, oh well, blah blah blah.
right,
Obviously Brian
right,
and him are friends. They sub each other, and membership, they're members, and it's the same thing. Even like if you go to set up a membership for yourself now, right? When you get there, it's like people, oh. Well, of course, because his members all win, or it's
right.
like it's like,
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things I had to, and we're getting a little off track, but
yeah, sorry,
no, it's all right because it's worth saying that's one of the things I kind of learned a little bit about the comic book community awards was saying like I kind of need to be neutral so that nobody can claim I'm playing favorites, right?
but they
So
still always will, just because.
right, people will complain regardless, but that's been a thought in my mind saying I kind of just need to be even keeled and not play favorites because somebody could say, oh, you know,
Right.
and they may say it anyway. So
Yeah. Sorry.
that's all right.
I'm Mr. Tangent.
All right. So let's get back to the next question. Um, if you had creative control over a character or a series, that you could rewrite or take in a different direction, who would you tackle?
There's lots of options out there that are very good, but at the end of the day, I got to take Spider-Man and put him back together with MJ and tell people stop it, leave them alone, stop freaking destroying this, and let's go back to the relation. That relationship was an anchor for many many stories that just has been lost ever since they broke them up, and the stuff that they keep doing with this will they won't they and all this other stuff that they keep doing it is just really really frustrating. Let's bring them back, give it some emotion to the stories and that anchor that he has, and let's then continue. Let's go back to writing something fun.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And that was one of the things when I got back into collecting and reading and being a Spider-Man fan, having read so much Spider-Man comics in the 80s and then being
Hmm.
away from it for a while, then coming back, I was surprised that he had, Peter Parker, and the story hadn't matured a little bit. Like, and I understand at the core, right? He's the down on his luck guy. He lost his parents. He's always struggling with money. But I thought, well, we've got 60 years of Spider-Man stories. He should have matured a little bit at some point, and like things should have turned for him. And so that was my biggest surprise coming back reading him. Like, what are they doing?
Look, and it was sort of scary to think about in reality. Is I think if you do the math, counting his stuff before he got there's more time that him and MJ have not been together than
Hmm.
there has been of them together in reality. But when you think of Spider-Man and MJ, they go together like peanut butter and jelly, man.
Right.
It's like you just expect them together, but it's just so long. It's been so long, and it's just frustrating as all hell because they
Yeah.
were good. She was good for him. She allowed that character to portray the emotional s- uh, side effects of what he was going through as he's trying to balance his life and do all this stuff. And she was always there for him and allowed you to have a more natural character dialogue of explaining why things are going on in his life or anything else instead of him having to talk to himself. I
Right.
hate
Right.
people sitting on top of rooftops talking to themselves for no reason. I mean,
Well, hopefully we'll get, there's they've been kind of hinting at it, right? The end of volume 5, they had, Peter and MJ, and then they blew that up right away.
sit
And
there,
now
tell us
we've
the
got
story of where we're at. What's happened in these? I mean, if I have to wait 75 to 80
oh, I know.
issues to find out what happened in that 6 whatever months when all of a sudden they're getting back together and all of a sudden poof, she's got kids with somebody else or she's adopted kids or what, I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
I think they're adopted, right?
They've
Because
got to be or something married into or something because they can't they haven't said enough time went by for her to
right, right. To have,
gestate
yeah, because the
and
kids are
have
like,
them grow
yeah,
up to
right,
that
right,
age. But they've she's been together with them long enough that they call her mom or whatever and
right.
stuff, and
Yeah. I mean, and what, we're 18 issues into the current run, and we don't really know what's going on.
barely
And
even touched on it.
no. And she's got a power set now that we're finding out as part of the dark web. She's developed some type of powers.
Great, because I'm a couple issues behind. So
Oh,
but
sorry.
it's all right. That's a but yeah,
Well,
that's going.
yeah, it's in kind of the tie-ins for dark web, but so they haven't explained any of it. Like it just appears.
I mean, and whatever went on was so bad that it kind of damaged his relationship with Aunt May and all this other stuff. I mean, the only way that some of this can almost make sense to me is that they come out of this, go, oh, by the way, this is actually not 616.
Hmm. Yeah, but then you're going to be like, oh, I
Yeah,
read all this and
but,
it's not main
61, yeah, but
continuity.
then,
Yeah,
but the stuff with the stuff with Chasm actually kind of ties in, and of course that's a whole different ball of wax. So,
right, right.
anyways, yeah. So I need to fix. We need to fix that.
I agree. I agree. I think most Spider-Man fans and readers feel the same way.
Yeah, I think even just Marvel fans in general. I think there's so many people who Spider-Man connects to some way to have him be just meandering for hundreds of issues at a time is just. I mean,
Yeah,
I honestly can't say that since Peter's come back that there's really been any great arcs.
yeah. No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've read now the complete, fifth volume, and the current volume, and nothing's
And
been.
the volume before that, when they had him try to be the new Tony Stark, it was okay. It wasn't. I mean, the best part of that was that they were slowly building up towards the end the relationship kind of concept of stuff. But at the beginning of it, he was in a relationship with Mockingbird.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I haven't read any of that. Wow. Yeah,
Oh
yeah. So
yeah.
it's been a while. We need to get him back on track. I agree. All right. So our fourth question is community or collecting. What's one thing that you don't care for, or or dislike?
Um, So there's a lot of area in the community and collecting for everyone, and I really, you know, this and people can go their ways of, and I don't see a. Fortunately, for the most part, the comic book community tends to accept various different things. Um, Lately, I've seen a lot of growing animosity towards what they call the dirty flippers
Mm,
and the spec. But I think the reality is that's misguided. I think I don't think that that is 100% what drove up the market and made books expensive or anything else. And I mean, it certainly may have contributed, but to some state or another, all of us have sold books or whatever else, and you know you can be a collector and a seller on the secondary market and everything else, and that's fine. But for me personally, the thing that I had to deal with that I really dislike is if you bring up, oh yeah, I have this 9.8 PGX. Oh my god, the hate and the diatribe that people are going to say about, you know, different, if you're not a CGC
right.
greater, like, every one of your books isn't CGC, they'll tolerate you as if you got CBCS books. But the CGC fanboys are like fascists, almost, and how like much that they pay obedience to that white square. And if you so much as mention something else in chats and live streams, man, I used to get, when I did so much stuff for a while, I had a lot of unboxings with PGX. The amount of comments that I would have to just like silence people or whatever, because it was like, look, I'm not dealing with your hate. I mean, it wasn't even
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was one thing. I don't mind if somebody wants to come up and say, "Well, I don't understand. I don't use them because of this," or they want to, or they even may, "Hey, why are you using PGX?" That's fine. But when somebody says, "Oh, why are you using those scammers? Why don't you know that they do this and this and this and blah blah blah?" And you're like, "Oh, or they overgrade and this that," and you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, what was your experience?" "Oh, I've never used them. But I've seen a bunch of videos and stuff." All right. Well, I had over almost 300 slabs graded with them. I think I have a better opinion about what's good and bad about them than a lot of other people out there. So if I tell you that, hey, these are issues that I experienced, again, I'm going to present it as these are issues that I experienced. Your individual results may vary,
Right.
right? If your slab lasts longer than 6 hours, well, good, it should. But but I'm never, if somebody's using somebody else, whatever. First of all, I'm not married to any one grading company. I think there's having multiple grading companies is good. It's
Yes.
good for the
Competition.
industry.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
good for the collector. It can, if we actually need more than two viable contenders, because what we see right now is where we have the state of one who's really got the lion's share, another one who's got a great product, but they've got issues, and so they have a small market share, and then two other guys who are just like sweeping up the crumbs,
Right.
right?
Right.
And we really need a third or a fourth solid alternative that the community respects, uh, so that helps to not only drive innovation but help to keep prices down and stuff, because we've just seen them just jack up prices and let the lead times go out of control or whatever else. And then you see a little bit of, okay, people are trying to clean things up and do a few things here and there, but we're seeing a lack of um, quality control. We're seeing a lack
Right.
of customer service, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we're just money. We're dollar sign. To those people, they don't care. Um, and so we as a community should care, and we as a community should embrace people trying alternatives and giving other options out there, because maybe I'm not trying to get a book that I want to resell. Maybe I just want a book that I want to preserve it. I want to hang it on my wall, and I always want it back fast and cheap. Well, then CGC and CBCS may not be that choice for
Right,
me,
right. Not the best
right?
option. Yeah.
Right. And so if I choose to use somebody else, that's my prerogative. It's my book. And if I give it away to somebody later on a giveaway, well, I'm giving you a free book, man. Don't come, oh, I don't want that PGX crap.
Right, right.
I was like, well, go to heck. I mean, you can take it and pay $14 and have it reholdered if you want, or regraded or whatever you want, but I mean, dude, if
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
about giving something away.
that is strange for somebody, especially because the community does so many giveaways and AOKs and things
Yeah.
like that, and for somebody to receive something free and then complain about it, that's like a
Exactly.
yeah,
And I mean, to the point where like I'm like subconscious about it. When I go to look for something to give away, I'm like, oh, I can't give that away because it's a PGX lab and somebody's gonna bitch about it, and it's like, sometimes I'll still slip them in there because I'm like, you know what, the heck with you. But at the same time, it's always in the back of my head, and it's
yeah, yeah, and
and
I think that's the community. I mean, because I've even thought of that. I'm doing a giveaway coming up, and I have one of the books I'm giving away is not a 9.8. It's
Mhm.
a slab
Right.
9.4, and I'm like, well, is this worthy? And I'm like, look, it's a slabbed book. It's a so
It's a
it's not
near
a nine
mint.
eight, but
It's a
yeah,
near mint book, buddy. That's
right,
the thing, right? And that's
right,
how people get the jadedness that people have gotten on
right.
certain things. It's like, dude, it's a near mint book. Just because it's not like near mint plus, you know what? Get
Yeah,
over yourself.
yeah.
It's
No, it's
free.
interesting.
How much? How much did you pay for it? Nothing. All right then.
Right. Yeah, yeah. The price was right, so don't complain.
Yeah. So yeah. They all
Yeah.
have
No,
issues. They
that's
all have issues, and they all have things, positives and negatives, and it's up to the individual to make up their choice for themselves on what grading company they want to use. And there's nothing wrong with being grading company fluid, such as myself, and
yeah. And I
using.
think I've seen a lot of your videos that you've done unboxings from different companies and or reviews, and you're very fair, right? You're going to tell us the
I,
pros and the cons.
huh.
The your and like you said, from your point of view, your experience, and you're fair. You're definitely fair with your assessment.
I want to try whenever I'm trying to do. I mean, if I'm just doing an unboxing of my own stuff, like I don't have a problem espousing my opinion. But if I'm going to present a video that's hey, I'm going to compare and contrast these, or hey, here's a first impression video type thing, that shouldn't be filled with any personal feelings that I have towards a company or not, right? It should be, if I'm a viewer, I want you to stick to the facts, leave the color out of it,
Right.
or to a minimum, right? And so I try to do that as much as possible and be very conscious about it. And if there's something that comes out of it that's not, then I like to follow it up or add some comments in there, or post some pins and stuff. Like one of my biggest videos uh, that I have on my channel is talks about why I use PGX for everything, right? And it's like that I do, or I use this for so much of my grading. Well, I don't use them for that anymore. It's a some of the elements of what I talk about in that video are very true, but the results of that my results ended up being something different. So there's a follow-up video, and I've linked it to that video and
Right.
all
Okay.
this other stuff. So that way, say, hey, look, this is one set of things, and here's another set of truth. Now you can take them, make your own decision at the end of the
Right.
day.
Well, and two, we change, right? As a collector, we evolve. We may be focused on one thing today, and then tomorrow it's something else, right?
Yeah,
Um,
maybe I care about resale value now, and I didn't
right,
before,
right.
or I all of a sudden like character labels, or I want to be cool and be part of the white label society. I don't know.
but you mentioned it in your early explanation of dirty flippers. But I think if you collect anything, at some point you're going to sell some, maybe
Yeah.
to refocus, or now you found something new that you want to collect and you want to try to
How many
recoup some money.
times?
So
How many times have you heard people say, "You got to have let the hobby fund itself,"
right,
all the time? Well, that means you're now probably buying and selling books. You're flipping. Now, maybe you're not doing that like every week, going and buying whatever scanning the previews and pre-ordering 10 copies of whatever the hottest book is and coming home and immediately rushing off to go slab it and flip it, or post, try to post, take that $5 book you just cleared your shelf at their LCS and now trying to put it up on eBay for $25.
Right.
There's different levels of it, right? But we've all done some elements of it, and it's really weird. And I won't want to name names. I've had certain collectors on my show where people have said, sometimes lumped them in with those crowds and whatnot. Well, people who buy and sell books, they still, even an LCS shop is buying books at one price and they're selling for another.
Right.
It's just
Right.
normal transactional
Selling for
business, right?
profit. Yeah.
They're a flipper. Got news for you. So can they have their own personal books in their own PCs? Absolutely. So why can't these other people who buy and sell books, or maybe why can't they also have their own PCs? And can't we be excited about that?
Right. Yeah. 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 Like I said, I just think any type of collecting, you're at some point you're going to refine that collection and
Yep.
probably sell something, whether it's comic books or action figures or die cast or baseball cards, whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So
Where I think, and to put this to rest, where I think that the real dividing line it ultimately is, and I talked about this on somebody else's show recently. I said, if I think where the real, for me, where I get a little bit irritated by the whole thing isn't that somebody goes out and buys some books and sells them on the secondary market. It's when they they also, in addition, try to go about creating artificial buzz
mm,
to hype up a particular book or something that they now are going to try to sell to maximize their own profits and stuff, where they're trying to build a sense of FOMO around a product that they know they're going to sell, right? I mean, there's a difference between just generally promoting something that, hey, I'm going to be doing a live sale tonight, versus going on streams for 2 weeks talking about a particular upcoming first appearance and how it's going to be ground changing, and trying to build up all that hype, and then going and clearing out every LCS I
right,
can find in my market of that first appearance and trying to flip them real fast for 5 times the profit. I mean,
right. That's where
those are different.
the whole influencer, thing, came about last year, and there was a lot of buzz
Right,
about it within
and
the
it is.
community.
It's that crossover range, that influencer slash flipper type thing. Because you and I, we're influencers. You put content out there,
Sure.
people consume it, and then people make, whether they directly make a decision based off your video or some of that information you present influences their decision that they make down the road. If anybody who's watched my EGS video and they decide, hey, I'm going to try them out, well, maybe to some degree I influenced them. I didn't do it for the sake of trying to make profit off of it, as I have no stake in the game. So that's just an informational video, but it's influencing people. It's in some sort of, information is a form of influence. It's a question of whether or not when they go create that content, are they doing it with the intent of them trying to profit
Profit. Right.
off of that influence, right?
Right.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I mean, I've seen, a cover on somebody's channel that wasn't on my radar, and I didn't even know it was out there. And then I see it and I say, wow, I really like that. Let me
Yep.
go buy that.
Yep. They influenced you.
Right.
Those dirty influencers.
But they didn't make any money off of it. I bought it at
Exactly.
my LCS. So yeah.
Right.
All right. So we made it through the four questions, that the standard questions that I ask everybody. The next two are going to be random. And now what I do is my first question is a random question that I come up with, and then we have a list of questions that we'll pick from. But we're going to switch gears and throw a little bit of a curveball at you for
Okay.
my random question, because I know you're a big barbecue guy.
Okay.
You're in California. I know you do barbecue competitions. You enjoy cooking, and my wife is from California, and so she introduced me to tri-tip. So I
Yes.
need you to educate the comic book community about tri-tip, because it's not a cut of meat that we have on the East Coast. And
Yeah. It's very California cut.
Yes, and so
Although there is a market, an online market, or in New York that does sell tri-tip, but I tell you, I've ordered their tri-tips for competition, and I had to not use them because they are not the same thing. But so the tri-tip is a cut of beef that comes from the sirloin section. It's got, except that unlike a normal sirloin steak, it's probably more akin to like the Brazilian picana, and some of that stuff where it's got a very marbled um, section of the sirloin. You only get one I think it's one or is it two tri-tips per cow, whatever it is. You don't get a lot, so it's not a lot. But each tri-tip is usually, it's a roast. It's about usually anywhere from 1.5 to 3 pounds, depending upon the size of the cow. And when it's properly done, it's a triangular cut of meat. It's like an
yeah.
isosceles triangle, and the grain kind of like splits off in two different directions on it. So you have to, when you go to cut it, you have to pay attention to the grain, because if you cut the meat the same way throughout the whole thing, you're going to get some that's against the grain and some that's with the grain. And cutting with the grain results in chewy meat versus tender meat. So that's one of the key things that's important. But it's a roast that typically, when we cook, the traditional Santa Maria
Mhm.
style tri-tip is salt, pepper, and garlic, and then you cook it over a white or red oak, and cooking it just over like an open flame over oak, whatever. It's the traditional method. When I do barbecue competitions, we typically try to smoke it. Um, the interesting tidbit that we have when we go to smoke it, because it's not something like a brisket where you're cooking to like 100 to 200 degree internal temperature. When you cook tri-tip, you're serving it at your traditional medium to medium rare uh, temperature. So you're only getting it up to about 125 to 130 degrees max before you're pulling it off and letting it rest. Ideally, it's 125. You're pulling off, letting it rest. Then the center will come to the perfect color when you go to present for a turn in. But if you smoke, that doesn't take very long. It only takes about an hour at smoke over 225 degrees to get that to that temperature. So you then need to then sear the outside. So usually we'll use some sort of open flame, something to sear the outside, because you
Mm,
want some of that
okay.
bark and crust on. You want that crust on the outside. That helps to give it some of that flavor as well. But I've done a lot of different ways of trying to cook it and experiment with it. For the most part, I use a very similar to traditional, because when you do competitions, I learned if you deviate too far from what the judges expect, you better hit it out of the park, because otherwise you get lambasted. I remember one year I did like a bourbon version, and they just went like,
So
"What
just
is
keep it
this?
simple.
Odd flavor." Yeah, I don't like. So yeah, so it's a wonderful piece of meat. What's great about tri-tip also is it's cheap.
That's
So
what I was gonna say. It's relatively inexpensive, right? Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it's gone up in price some lately. I mean, I can still find it every once in a while, like on sale, untrimmed. It will cost me. I can sometimes usually get it for still from around $2.99 to $3.99 a pound when it's on special. Untrimmed though means if you're going to buy something that's like 3 pounds, and you're going to cut about a pound of fat off of it. Um, but it's still cheaper than paying $7 to $9 a pound for a trimmed one that only weighs 2 pounds. So um, but it's inexpensive. It feeds probably, it's going to feed four to six people, depending on the size of that thing, and so flavorful. Just an
Yeah.
absolute wonderful cut of meat. If you've never had access to a tri-tip, if you can get one or ask your butcher for one, I highly recommend it. It's a great grilling piece of meat. Offset grill, and then finish it over high heat to get some char on it, or even put it in your oven. Put it in your oven, cook it slow and low. Once it gets to about 100 degrees, turn the broiler on. Let the broiler get that crust on the outside a little bit until you get up to about that 125, 130. Pull her out, let her rest for 10 to 12 minutes, and slice and enjoy. Just again, make sure you know which way those grains are going and cut across the grain.
Yeah, it was a game changer, right? Because I'm I like barbecue, I like steak and beef, but the first time I had tri-tip, it was like, wait a minute, I've never had where has this been all of my life?
Right? Why don't I have this more of this? Is cheap, it's flavorful, and wonderful.
Whether
Yeah,
it's just sliced. I mean, I've seen it on sandwiches, sliced, nachos. I mean, you
mhm.
can put it, do so many different things with it. But I was like, wait a minute, I I, I don't understand. Like, we don't have this here. Why don't we have it in on the East Coast? So,
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
same thing when I try to hunt down a pecana roast to do pecana with a fresh chimichurri or something. It's like so hard to find sometimes, but it's like so good.
and it was funny. The East Coast Costco's recently, this past summer, actually had tri-tip for a period of time, and
Ooh,
then they discontinued it because nobody was buying it because nobody knew what it
what,
was.
what it was, yeah.
And so we saw it, my wife and I saw it, and we were like loading up, put it in the freezer, buy as many as you can because we never get them. So yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So that was my random question for you because like I said, I'd like to educate those other
Yeah,
beef eaters out there about
I don't have
about
it
tri-tip.
nearby, but somewhere around here there's some trophies for tri-tip competitions. So
Yes, and I know you're a big smoke barbecue guy, so figured that was a good question for you. All right, so we're gonna hit our last question. And this is total random. I have 50 questions, so just give me a
is it on a
number.
wheel? Tell me you're on a wheel. That'd
No,
be
I
great.
just have them listed in
Oh, okay.
a Word document.
Oh, I need a set of dice. Yeah. Let's do 42. Meaning of life
42.
and everything.
All right, this is an interesting one. Which would you rather do? Wash dishes, mow the lawn, clean the bathroom, or vacuum the house?
Hmm. That is an interesting question. Well, generally I do the dishes. I don't have a lawn to mow.
Okay.
Because California had droughts, we pulled it out, everything
Yes,
else.
yes.
Um, and I don't like doing the cleaning bathrooms, not at all. What was the fourth one? Was
Or vacuum the house.
oh, I have a robot to do that. So
All right, so it's
uh,
like process of
yeah,
elimination. I guess it's the
yeah.
dishes.
Well, I like telling the robot to go vacuum the house. It's pretty simple and taxing. But no, cleaning the kitchen. I mean, I don't enjoy it necessarily, but I don't mind it either too because as much. Because when I do cooking and stuff, I'm also w- very kind of conscientious about how things are cleaned and
Mm.
the prep spaces, and I want them a certain way, and um, all that type of stuff. So it's just
I've learned quite a bit about cooking just from watching some of your videos. We spatchcocked a turkey recently.
nice.
Um, so that was new. And then even I think I watched a video about you showing how to carve a turkey, or you talked about it
Oh,
on a live
oh, the
stream.
way, yeah, the way that I do it, yeah.
Because I'm usually the one who carves, and it's not like you learn that in school.
No, everybody
Um,
sees a Norman Rockwell picture of like, here's a whole bird on a table, which first of all, who does that? And
right,
secondly,
right,
then they see the turkey breast on the bird, and they slice like this length of the turkey. Well, that's the wrong way on the
right.
grain.
And I
And
was
so
doing
start
that way. I was slicing it that way for years.
right. And so I always use a boning knife to remove the breast whole from the bird and then slice it across. And then because you slice it like that, then I can scoop it up on the knife and plate it. You can plate it as it's a whole breast, but it's all
Right.
sliced up. People can just pull it off, and it looks beautiful when you plate it that way.
Yes. Yeah. I've ever since I watched your video or heard you talk about it, and then did looked up more videos.
Nice.
Thanksgiving dinner has been much better presented.
You do that, and having to you work in that stuff underneath the skin of the above the breast and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I
Get
learned a
that butter
lot. It was
compound up in there, and nice.
That was it. So you made it through. You made it through all the questions.
Whew, I survived.
So anything else that you want to mention, about yourself, your channel, or anything that before we wrap up?
Just simply that if you're not haven't checked it out the channel, I'd appreciate if you would go check out the channel. Everything that I do on the Fat Stacks Comics channel is from a revenue generating
Mm.
standpoint goes to comics curing cancer. So I don't pocket any of the ad revenue, the channel membership, or anything that YouTube takes their cut, and then everything else that comes to me, I donate to Comics Curing Cancer, which is a campaign of the American Cancer Society. Last year, in depending on when you're watching this, in 2022, as part of our effort that we did there, we were able to raise over $22,000. Now, that wasn't my channel generating all that revenue. That was the community come together, do our community event for the most part. But I'm hoping to augment some of that with the channel membership and the revenue the merch sales revenue, the advertisement revenue, helped throughout the year to put that going towards that. So we already have that cushion leading us to get a head start for this year's campaign. Because this year, I think that means the goal has to be, well, minimum it has to be 25,000, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, you want a stretch goal at 30,000? That's a lot of money to raise, man.
That is, and yeah, yeah. And I got involved with Comics Here and Cancer last year late, and
Yeah.
jumped in, did some donations and things like that. But I was amazed at how this is year two of the event, how the community just really came together, and so I'm
Yeah.
excited about
Right.
this year's event because there's a lot more eyeballs on it. People are aware of it now, and I think it's just going to
Yeah.
be even
That's it.
bigger and
The
better.
the number that we were able to raise really caught a lot of people's attention. So a lot of channel people that had reached out to try to get involved, because I was all about trying to get these overlapping circles of influence. And I wanted to get some other of the big channels, and they were kind of like, well, I'll promote it or whatever else, because they didn't necessarily want to get hitched to it, or they didn't know about it or anything else. I think this year it's gonna be a little bit different. I think it's gonna be you're gonna see potentially at least one or two of those channels kind of go, okay, no, no, I want to be a part of this, because that was what you guys did last year was huge, and I want to be a part of that. Absolutely, right? So yeah, that's my big thing. I'm happy, thank you, Cardboard Crazies, who created uh Comics Curing Cancer. Was his brainchild. He started it. Thank you for allowing me to step in while he was having a baby, or his wife was having a baby. He was getting to enjoy that addition to his family. And I look forward to working with him this year on it as we continue to drive it and do even bigger and better things. So if you dislike cancer, this is the channel for you. If you like cancer, well, go watch some other channel.
And we'll have links down in the description for Rob's channel, his Instagram, and I'll put the. Well, can you still donate now for?
So yes, you can. By the time this airs, I'm sure you will be able to. So the new link is being generated right now for
Okay.
me.
Oh, excellent for this
So
year then.
for
Okay.
this year's link, right? So we'll have that up posted on the on my community tab, as well
Okay.
as
Yeah, and
it'll
I'll
be
link
on
it
the
if it's available.
back
We'll
of my
link it down in the
videos.
video
Yeah.
so that people can go
Or you can
check
just
it out.
reach out to me and say, "Hey, Rob, I really want to make a donation to this. How can I do so?" And I will give you the information on how you can get it. So it goes directly, not you don't have to send it to me. It will go
Okay.
directly to the American Cancer Society. So there's no question, and
Tax deductible.
you get your receipt, you get all that fun stuff. Absolutely.
And is the plan still to do it? Because I know last year's event was in October. So is the
Yeah, so
plan?
actually, I just had part of this whole thing was I was asked, when are we going to do it this
Oh,
year?
okay.
And so I said, well, for right now, let's go with, and I think it's the weekend before Halloween or something.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Good.
and I said, let's do this, because if it turns out that that's not going to work, then we can always. I still have time. I can change it. But for right now, the plan is, yeah, like October 21st.
Okay.
20th, 21st, and 22nd would be the current plan for the big event. So
Okay.
this is breaking. I haven't told anybody who's
Okay.
involved
Good.
about
Good.
this,
Yeah. Well, it's
because
good to get it
I
out there, right?
just because I just honestly yesterday, as of our recording this, went ahead, was in contact with the ACS to get it set up.
Great. No, that's good news because I think the more we can promote it, then more eyeballs we'll have on it,
Mhm.
and get people excited about the event because the 3 day event was there was so much participation. You had Legion of Comics and Mark and DJ Links be kind of your, right and left hand man, really helping out with a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff. So I think, we'll have even more support for it this year. So
Yeah, I'm
I'm,
hoping so.
like I said,
Again,
I'm excited about it
my
already.
my collection took a big hit during
Yes, you
that show.
donated a lot of
So
stuff. Yes.
so I'm hoping to get some more help on some of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You pulled a lot of stuff out of your
Yeah.
PC to donate. So yeah. All right, Rob. Well, thanks very much for being on. And
Thank you
like I
for
said,
having me,
links
Brian.
links are down below. Please go. If you don't know Rob, please go check him out. On IG or here on YouTube, and definitely, like I said, if you're new to him, check out Only Slabs on Saturdays. It
11:30
is,
a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern.
and it's the award winning show.
That's
Um,
right. There's this
and
little. If you guys don't know, there's this great award program that goes out. It's community based. It's called the Comic Book Community Awards. This guy Brian LCS came up with this thing, and he puts it out there and does a fantabulous job promoting it. That should count. That's 2 extra votes, right? And so thank you for doing it. I mean, I when you first came up with this idea and you put it out there, I said, man, this guy is a glutton for a punishment because there's nothing like a lightning rod like saying, "Hey, everybody, I'm going to do this," and it's like, "Okay," but
Yeah,
it's
I didn't when I came up with it, I didn't think that would be the reaction. I really didn't think people would have a negative reaction to it. But, I learned quickly that, there was some critics. So,
maybe they
well,
don't have negative reaction, but there's some very opinionated individuals
yes, this
for
is
sure
true. This is true.
on why you're doing it wrong.
Yes, very true.
But
Very true.
hats off to you for doing that. But yes, Only Slabs was fortunate enough to not only be nominated but to win an award last year. I'm sure this year we're gonna have a much harder time as both Chris and I are now moved up the ladder into the next level of subscriber bases, which means we have much larger or a different level of competition.
Yes,
There you
yes.
go. That's the right word.
Yes. Yes, but you guys are bringing some great guests, and so like I said, if you don't know Rob, that's the show to get introduced to him. I think that's a good, it's because it's a fun community hangout. As the chat is always, and then you'll most likely see a book or two that you've probably never seen, that the guest will present. So it's definitely a fun show
Thank you,
to check
Brian.
out.
Appreciate that.
So, but so Rob, yep. Again, thank you very much for being on. Check out Rob. Links down below. Please go check him out. Thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next episode.